Good evening. Welcome to this month's Town Administrator's Report. I'm David Watts Jr., and with me is our Town Administrator, Steve Mayo. Steve, welcome.
Welcome. How are you, David? Merry Christmas.
And to you as
And
well.
Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah. Hanukkah just wrapped up last night. We're taping this the night after Hanukkah has ended. And also with us is our Chief of Police, Rick Smith. Rick, welcome. This is the second show in 3 months.
Well, thank you. Thank you, David. And thank you, Mr. Mayo. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Happy holidays to everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you.
I think you've been the most guest on the Town Administrator Report. We're going to have to do a history. I think the chief has been here the most.
Probably
Probably.
Probably.
We'll have those numbers. We'll
of
see.
the people who are around right now, because we've had school superintendent many times, but the school superintendent has changed over
Right.
the years. And hopefully we'll have her next month. But we're going to talk about, instead of our usual year in review that we do in December, the troubling incidences of the last couple weeks at the Galvin and also at the high school. And Chief, why don't you fill us in a little bit on what's been going on and what's happening with those cases right now?
Well, David, as most of our people know, we've had a series of events that have happened. And I'm just going to generalize a little bit because I do have to protect people's rights and of course, their ages because we're talking juveniles here. But we've had a couple of instances where there have been threats made, there have been veiled threats made, there have also been some vandalism, some anti-Semitic events that have happened both on school buses as well as in school buildings. And as a result of that, we've settled down and we've worked very closely with the school department to try to identify who is responsible for this type of behavior, which is completely unacceptable behavior. And those who we've been able to identify, we're going to manage that situation. We've put them, some of them are in the court system right now. But what the thing that has come out of this, most importantly, is that we've been able to bring the school community, the police community, and the community in general together to try to identify the people, put a stop to it, and at the same time, educate. We always believe that enforcement is always the last bar that you want to cross. We try to educate, we try to identify, we try to educate, and if that doesn't work, then we use the enforcement piece. So, you know, we've had a couple of situations where our school resource officers have done yeoman's work. They've really pitched in, they've identified individuals, they've talked with people in the schools, they've talked with administration in schools. Our line people have been out making the connections, getting the information from people, and hopefully we're going to put a stop to this because it's not, this is not our community. This is not what Wakefield is all about. As I said a few minutes ago, it's most important that people understand that we have come together as a community, and a big part of that is our faith-based community that we've been working very closely with to bring a stop to this type of behavior. I will tell you this, that of all the events of the past couple of weeks that have been going on, we have not missed one day of school. We have not missed one class, and I can fully assure you and everybody in this community that our schools are safe, and your children, when they come to school, are safe. So the learning environment should not be compromised in any way.
And, you know, the negatives that this represents really are offset to an even greater degree with the positives that we have going for us in Wakefield. Not only the citizen organized groups like Wake Up and Wave and the UU Church's Social Action Committee, but also the town government, the Human Rights Commission, which is a quasi-governmental body, the police department, and the school system itself, and the efforts they do to educate the kids. Let's talk, we were talking a little bit before the show about the school resource officers and what they do here in Wakefield and how it differs from other towns. How is that?
Our school resource officers and the officers that support them are unique. And our officers are involved in programming, our officers are involved in the educational piece. We're just not a security force, or some people think that we're a disciplinary force to replace what goes on in the school. The school has their own protocols, they have their own discipline issues, and processes, and that's how it should work. But what's unique about our 3 school resource officers, and I include Mike Pietrotonio, who's up at the vocational
yeah.
school, they are program oriented. They're in the forefront of the mental health piece, educating our kids, training our kids through the RAD programs that we have. So we take on a very different, very positive role, and the value added to that and what they do is seen years and years after. For instance, when the kids leave the middle school and they come up to the high school, or they go on to the vocational school, they have such a different perspective on issues like ethics, respect, just how to get along with others, what they should and shouldn't do. When they get into those upper grades, we see a huge difference in how the schools run. We see a huge drop in violence and a huge drop in vandalism to the schools. And that's all the result of the hard work that's done every day and fostering that respect, not only for the kids and the teachers, but for the buildings and the properties and the town. So being on the forefront and taking that extra step up front, I think is paying dividends.
And that was a big part of when the chief brought this forward a few years ago, and we started with one school, and then another school, and then vocational school. It wasn't going to be a security guard. We hate to use that word. It
Right.
wasn't what we wanted. You know, we wanted an integration into the school system, into the program, as he says. And our school resource officers, they know the kids, tell the chief, they know the parents, they know the step-parents. They know maybe if someone is interacting with the kid that shouldn't be, or is unusual, maybe I should say, and that it's so preventative in what's going on. So it's, I think it's quite a testament, and we have to thank the community for funding it, because a lot of communities say, well, why do we need this? And I think we see it's hard to prove what you're preventing, and what has been preventing has been incredible. Like you said, the respect, the lack of vandalism. So when we do get vandalism on these occasions, it's a big thing because it's not happening all the time.
Right.
And it almost is glaring when it happens. So.
Well, and I think that's the other point, is that unlike some other towns around Boston, this is really the first time in a long time that this has happened. And granted, it seems to be, multiple instances all of a sudden. But to a large part, we've escaped this problem that other towns and cities have not, in the last couple of years especially.
Well, I think they'd follow that up. First of all, let me just back up a little bit. Steve and I, we fought hard for these positions. I sometimes it was at the point where you almost wanted to give up. But we both knew the value of it, and we were able to get these positions funded. And I'm great as chief. I'm grateful for that. But to get back to your other point now about what's going on in other communities, there seems to be a bump. This is a bump in the road for us. Everybody goes through this, and right now it's Wakefield's turn. With all the events that are going on in the world, these kids are all hooked into the internet. They know exactly what's going on in Washington. Right. They all know the whole situation in Jerusalem and Israel and all that stuff that's going on over there. So they know what's going on in the world. And although I firmly believe that most of the kids that are, I shouldn't say most of the kids, the few that we're looking at, I don't think they really understand what they're doing. I really don't think they understand what a swastika means. They certainly weren't around in 1939.
Right.
So, but so it's our job to make them understand and to help them along in that way. But to take it further, we look at the youth risk behavior survey that comes out. And our school resource officers, our line officers, we look at that. We look at it with Wake Up. We look at it with all the interested party, human rights. We dissect it so that our SROs not only know what's going on, but they're able to talk to the students about risky behavior, whether it's smoking, whether it's sexual issues,
bullying,
just respect for people of other races, ethnicities, sexual preference. And I think it's very important that, and this brings me back to the whole point, is that we do this as a community. And we do it with human rights. We do it with the Wake Up group. We do it with the peer leaders in the high school. We do it with with the peer leaders down in the middle school. And that's all done as a result of, you know, what our staff and our community wants done, and we get it done.
And I do agree. I think that, unfortunately, there's a national tone that is spreading a kind of a pallor over everything. And I think that
True.
some of these young kids who don't understand, I agree, most of them don't understand what those symbols mean, and they see this on the news, and they see
Right.
it, they hear the tone, they hear people bullying from the pulpit in government
Sure.
in Washington, D.C., and they
Sure.
think that that's
Acceptable.
acceptable. It's okay.
Yeah.
If they can do it, I can do it. And so it's a battle for us as a community, because
Right.
it's not what Wakefield is about at all.
Right. Well, they hear national leaders
Yeah.
supporting
Yeah.
groups that previously were limited to the dark fringes of our society.
And it's
They see on the newsreels, they see Charlottesville, Virginia. They see
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
hate that's down there.
Sure.
And, you know, whether it's sexy or fashionable or it's just behavior that's unacceptable, we don't know how they're looking at that. And it's our job to make them aware
Right.
of
Right.
what is acceptable
Right.
and what is not.
And I think when you juxtapose that on a news reel, on a news forecast, newsreel shows my age, doesn't it? When I say that.
I started it. I'm sorry. With your moral, okay.
on the newscast, and then and I hate to sound like I'm being preachy, and then you see some of the recreational games that the kids are playing, these video games, and that's what they're doing. I just think it gets morphed, and they don't understand, and I think it's so important that we put a stop to that and
Right.
bring that stuff back. So
Well, one discussion that has started to crop up in the Human Rights Commission is, and we're going to be exploring a little more of this after the holidays, is civics. We're old enough to remember civics lessons in school. Well, those disappeared at the end of the 70s. Kids don't get that today.
no.
And we see that lack of civics education in the way people comport themselves at town meeting, for instance, younger people especially, although they're not the only ones. We see that in some of these incidences. So how would bringing civics back help the
I
situation?
think it'd be a great help, because I think that our young people and maybe some of our parents and older people could learn from it too, is having a discussion in a civilized manner, even though you disagree, is how we've functioned in this community for years and years. That's not what they're seeing that's happening on
Right.
Washington, D.C. And I don't know, and I think the whole social media piece, which is another real gorilla in the room that I know that the police department is fighting too, because there's so much misinformation out there that we fight as a town, the school department fights. You know, where did we get from "I disagree with you" to "your idea is dumb," "you're stupid," or "you're worse"? And I think that leap happens very easily behind the keyboard and in a strain. And all of a sudden, what were they even talking about in the beginning here?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
it was like, "I don't like pea soup," and then all of a sudden
Right.
at the
It
end,
just keeps
it just
escalating
keeps
to-
escalating and misinformation, and it's hard for the police department, school department. It's hard for the town to sometimes to get in word in edgewise, because this stuff is out there at 4 a.m. and it's crazy, and then all of a sudden you wake up and everything's going on.
You know, just to follow up on that, Steve, over the weekend, social media exploded.
Right.
And I made it perfectly clear last night at the meeting down at the Galvin School that I don't go on Facebook. I don't like Facebook.
Yeah.
To me, it's just a waste of everybody's time, and I made it perfectly clear. And the school department too, in many reasons. For many reasons, they don't. If I'm going to spend my time, I'm going to spend my time on the phone with somebody, getting the information that's going to help resolve the problem, not countering some crazy, unsubstantiated rumor that has exploded on Facebook. And you know, I asked the people last night, and I mean this sincerely. If we're going to solve this problem, we're going to do it together. We're not going to do it on Facebook.
Right.
Some of the stuff that I did read that was sent to me over the weekend, I had to laugh because it's crazy, crazy stuff. And I've said to many people in the last 48 hours, if you have a question, ask me. Call Dr. Smith. Call the school. Call the police department.
Sure.
We'll give you the answer. Don't believe what you read
Right.
on Facebook.
Yeah.
And, it's a good use of our time. We have a conversation.
Right.
We're not hiding behind, like Steve says, we're not hiding behind a keyboard. These problems that we're having right now, they're going to be solved only one way. The police department isn't going to solve it. The school department's not going to solve it. The community's not going to solve it. But all three entities are going to solve it. And again, I said last night, Sir William Peel, the father of modern policing, back in London in the late 1800s, said the community of the police and the police of the community. And we need that input. We don't need Facebook. We need a phone call and a face-to-face conversation. And we'll fix it. We'll make it right. But the three entities are going to make it right together. That's the only way to do it.
And there are some hopeful stories too. Over the weekend, CNN had a story about a black man who grew up in Belmont, I'm trying to remember his name, Darrell Davis, I think it is, who has made it his mission in life to talk, not, confront, but to talk to members of the Ku Klux Klan. And the number of Klan people he's talked to who are now ex-Klan people, who have given him their robes as a tribute to their conversations, is just amazing. We can talk to each other regardless. The problem is, too much of the time it's talking at each other.
Right. It is true. A little close at home, some of the really good things that have been happening.
Yeah.
Both Chief Smith and I would say we're privileged and lucky enough to be at the menorah lighting, the second menorah lighting down on the Veterans Memorial Common.
To start
to
Hanukkah.
start Hanukkah.
Yep.
And I would say 70, 100 people there. It was a good crowd.
Yeah, there was a
really
good
good crowd in what was a chilly kind of day, and rain was threatened and everything. But really, of all faiths, by the way. I mean, there were people there of all faiths. And I thought it was absolutely fabulous that we as a community have that. We have, the week before or a couple of weeks before, the live nativity on the Common for a couple hours by one of the churches. And I just think those things are great, the way that we're celebrating them, and it's celebrated by all faiths. And I didn't get a latke. Did you get a latke? I was disappointed I didn't get a latke. They were all out. So next year we want to make sure we get that. But
Latkes are
I
good.
can tell you that the singing and the message
Yep.
that was given by the clergy that was putting that on, and the notes put on the menorah about what are you going to do better this year, what are you going to, I thought that's all fabulous. And every night and I said, boy, that says a lot about our community. And that's the community that I think we know. And so when these bumps in the road, like you said, happen, we have to hold on to these good things.
And that's the part of the community that we're trying to foster.
Exactly.
I've had a call in my capacity on the Human Rights Commission from a local resident who's the child of Holocaust survivors who would like to put together a program to educate the school kids about the Holocaust and what the swastika came to stand for. Because before 1925, it was a completely different meaning than how we see it today.
Really completely different.
Yeah.
Well, to follow through on that, Dave, prior to 1925, not that I remember it, but
No, you and I are the same age, so.
it was a symbol of unity.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
what the Nazi Party did was they brought
perverted
it in
it.
as a symbol of unity.
Yeah.
Wrong type of unity,
Yeah.
nonetheless. And there are many adults who have no idea of the history of that hate symbol.
Right.
And that's something that I brought up last night is what we've seen are symbols of hate, but that doesn't necessarily make it a hate crime. It can be vandalism, it could be anything.
Right.
And we step back and we look at it and we make a determination on what we have and what's in front of us, and then we grow from there.
Right.
And I have to tell you that in the past few weeks, going back to the lighting of the menorah on the Common, the unity we saw there, and everybody coming together, and the conversation, every time I picked up my cell phone in the last 72 hours, had Kim Smith's name on it. And, just the going back and forth, the meetings we had, It's all good. Even though it's over an ugly subject that we're
Sure.
going to beat,
Sure.
it was all good. It was
Sure.
all positive.
Well, in the same way, when the Human Rights Commission and the UU Social Action Committee did the series of talks back in October, one on white privilege and one on Black Lives Matter, the interaction between the audience and the speakers in each, and especially the second one, Martin Henson from Black Lives Matter just did an amazing job, was electric, because people were trying to understand, people were trying to move forward and not just have a mindset that's existed for 100 or 200 or 400 years. And these were all Wakefield people that were involved in this, that were communicating with the speakers.
Yeah, well, I'm very hopeful for going forward. You know, some of the things that are happening with the schools and with the community. They run an international night last few years. A medical coordinator runs it, but you have a lot of different. You know, Wakefield is changing a little bit. We're getting a lot of different faiths and ethnic groups here, and you can see it when we run our Wakefield 101. You can visually see
Absolutely.
people that are coming into town and are attracted to this community, and it's great. And the international night is fabulous, and something that I hope gets more attention and more press as we go on. It's a weeknight, but it's a real fun night. You see how happy the people are to share their culture with you, and we learn a lot from them too. And I've had a chance to speak at a couple of the high school clubs. The Young Democrats invited me in to talk to them, and they were really very concerned and wanted to talk about some of these national issues and what it meant to them. These are like 16, 17, 18-year-old kids. And I'm not saying Democrat, Republican, like, really partisan. That's like the club that they're in. But they're really concerned with the issues and what it means to them as they go forward. And the other thing is that the high school does have, and I was heartened to see that principal at the junior high, Adam Colantonio, talked about involving the diversity club.
Right.
Because that's
Which
really
is at the high school.
At the high school,
Yeah.
and involving that maybe those older students teaching some of those younger students. That's really has had a great impact on a lot of people, and become a don't be a bystander, be an advocate. That whole program that they've worked in, and I think worked very closely with the school resource officers. I think that's fabulous. So I'm really very hopeful about that.
Right.
We had a little bump, and I think by people that, in my opinion alone, is that I think that the young people that were involved in these things really didn't understand, and we need to do a better job of educating them. I think, is that your sense that they probably don't understand the hatred of that? And I think that that's important. I think I'd feel a lot worse if they knew exactly what they were doing.
Right.
So I'm hopeful, and I think that we keep going the course, we keep working on these programs, getting better about it, and I think that it's going to get better.
Well, and also I think the other important factor is, and I spoke to this yesterday at Rotary, which had invited me to speak about human rights, and that is the involvement of the community. That is the business leaders in town stepping up and working with the different groups. That is neighbors, talking to neighbors they don't know that well yet, and getting to know them, because the neighborhoods are becoming more complex. The neighborhoods are becoming more interesting in a lot of ways with the people that have been attracted to this town. And people, we've seen it at Wakefield 101 when people tell us why they moved to Wakefield, and it certainly isn't because the housing is really cheap,
No, quite the contrary.
So it's the schools, it's the environment, it's the livability,
It's the community,
it's
it's
all
the-
of those
the sense
things,
of
the sense of
community,
community that is drawing people to come here to Wakefield and move into the different neighborhoods around town.
Yeah.
I mean, we see it in Greenwood, how diverse Greenwood is becoming, which is fantastic. And everyone in the neighborhood, no matter what their age, is going to benefit from that.
One of the things that came up last night was, it was suggested that if for every person in that room, and there were probably 50 people in that room, I was surprised. I get there a couple of minutes late, and I walked into the back. I was surprised. But one of the things that we talked about was, when we leave this meeting, each one of you go back to your home and talk to 5 of your neighbors. And not your friends, your neighbors.
Right.
Whether
Right.
it's someone behind you that you haven't met
Yeah.
or someone across the street that you don't know.
Right.
And they may not look like you, but
Right.
go talk to them and talk to them about this issue and strike up a friendship and in a conversation.
Right.
And that's where you get the dynamic change. And hopefully some people will do that. Because
Right.
if we take 10 of those people and they go talk to 5 people, there's 50 more people that are now aware
Right.
of you know, what we're trying to accomplish.
And maybe those 5 will talk to a few more, and it
Sure.
will just explode. I mean,
And-
we have to do the anti-Facebook explosion, do the actual human explosion, right?
Right.
To talk
Exactly.
to people.
You know,
We always say in the police department,
go to Brothers and have breakfast together, or go to Chibo's and have coffee
Yeah.
together, you know?
we always say in the police department, if somebody has a bad experience, if somebody has a good experience with
Yeah.
the police department, they go and they tell 5 people. If somebody has a bad experience, they go and they tell 55 people. So what do you want? I want the
Right.
5 people.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so we think, if you think about that, it's true. You
Yeah.
go into a grocery store,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's the same thing. Doesn't matter whether it's public service,
Yeah.
private sector, or just being a good neighbor.
Yeah. You go to
Yeah.
a restaurant. You had a great meal. You tell 5. If you had a bad one, you tell everybody.
Yeah.
You know, it's awful.
right.
You know, and
Stay
it may
away
have just
from
been a
there.
bad day. Yeah.
You know?
I know.
Luckily, that we have some great restaurants, you know, opportunities for people to meet there, too.
Yeah.
You know, maybe that's the next thing is to have some sort of meet and greet for new residents at one of the restaurants or something, you know?
We had a coffee back in Community Policing Week. We had coffee with a cop, and it was phenomenal. People came in out of our comfort zone, and that's what you have to do. Sometimes you have to get out of your comfort zone, and you get out of that comfort zone, and the conversation flows. It just becomes easy, and then the next time it's easier.
Right.
You know, so
Yep.
it's all good.
And,
lot of good.
and maybe eventually people will realize the truth, that skin color is just skin color. It's where your forebears settled on the earth. That's it. At the deepest level, we're all the same.
Before we wrap up, though, I know
Yep.
we're at the end. I'll close to it. I do want to reiterate to the people that are watching and people that are listening and are going to talk to the neighbors about this
Right.
conversation that we're having today, that please call us if you have an issue. Don't go on Facebook, because I
Please,
don't look
yeah.
at Facebook. Call us. I'd rather spend the time having that conversation with you, and then we can hopefully fix the problem. And Dr. Smith says the same thing. Please call the school department, and we'll get it fixed.
Right.
May take us a little time, but we'll get it fixed.
And,
So-
and I agree completely, because I think the other thing that happens is by the time you go on Facebook, let's say you put it on there at 10 in the morning, and no one's looked at it. It's 2 o'clock, now you're seething because no
Right.
one's paying attention to me.
Right.
Well, that's not what we're monitoring. Call us, we want to help you.
Right.
Right.
We want to solve what we can. Believe
Right.
us, that's what we're here for. But we're not monitoring some of these chat rooms and things. We're not in them. We don't know.
Right.
We're not monitoring.
And hopefully people are getting this message. Unfortunately, we have come to the end, but, you know, the one sentiment that comes out of this conversation we've had, and I want to wish it to everyone out there who has been watching us all year long, and hopefully will watch us next year. I want to wish everyone peace on earth and goodwill to all people,
All people.
all people. Thank you.
Yeah, that's-
We'll see you next month in 2018.